Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 95. Thanks so much for joining me. This is a new format. Today's guest is going to be Supriya Kaur Dhaliwal. She'll be joining us at the top of the hour. The first hour, or first half hour, is always going to be Poetry Spawn Live now. So we're combining the two shows that we've done into one show, and we'll try to get to we'll try to share the poems that we published this week. We'll try to talk to the poets that we published at Poetry Spawn this week. Then we'll also open up the open lines for any news-related poems for the first half an hour. We'll get to a few. Then we'll spend an hour with our guest poet of the week. And the guest this week, like I mentioned, is Supriya Kaur Dhaliwal. This is her book, The Yak Dilemma. So we'll be joining her in just a little bit. So a wonderfully imaginative book here by Supriya. So she'll be here in about a half an hour. But before we begin the whole thing, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do this because we love poetry, and I know you love poetry because you're here on your Sunday morning or afternoon, however it may be. So please do click the like button and make sure you share, tell your friends, make sure you click the bell for notifications, do all that fun stuff to help us out as we try to spread poetry around the internet. Now, we have two poems that we chose for Poetry Spawn this week. And I'll read the first one, the Sunday poem, in a little bit. But the second poem is going to be on Tuesday. We'll have a preview of that. And this is a familiar face to people on the Rattlecast. It's Richard Westheimer again. This is two poems from Richard Westheimer in about a month's span. So he's really hitting the ball out of the park here. Both these poems that we published, both Richard's that's forthcoming, and today's poem, Look, by Marissa Glover, made me tear up a little bit. I mean, we always say if a poem makes us laugh or cry, we publish it, and it doesn't happen as much. You get a little desensitized over time, but these two poems both made me a little misty. Similar topics, too, which may be one of the reasons for that. But let's call up first Richard Westheimer and do a preview of this poem that he has forthcoming on Tuesday. Let's call up Richard. Hey, Richard, thanks so much for joining me. Let me get you sized right. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a little later in the morning for me than it is for you. I've had a chance for my coffee to metabolize.
Yeah, I'm still working on my coffee a little bit. I've got like 3 sips down, so I need a little bit more. But usually the Rattlecast can be at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern. So it'll normally be in the evening like usual. But it's only because Supriya is in India. So you have another poem in Poetry Spawn coming up on Tuesday, Richard. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it was about?
Sure. First, I'll say the poem was very problematic to write. The poem is about the conflict in Israel, Palestine, Gaza, which of course is a difficult topic to begin with, and it's just the poem feels as conflicted to me and did as I was writing as the conflict, which might be why it worked, because it didn't feel like it worked when I sent it out. And I have to acknowledge the fact that it's coherent at all has to do with my wife read an early draft and slashed all of the things that were distracting from it and said, go back, work some more on it. So I really appreciate her first reading. And the writing started with a simple line, actually, that was in my notebook last week, which said, after seeing some of the conflict erupt, and the simple line was, I can't stop being a Jew. Which writing that line reflected what I understand, like Frost's notion of getting yourself into legitimate danger. Just writing that line felt like his version of legitimate danger. And then I saw this story about this 4-year-old Palestinian girl, Sarah. And it just sort of created this sense of humanity in me. And I encourage folks to look at it or the New York Times display of all the children who were killed and just to remember this isn't news. Mm-hmm. It's people. So that's basically what
Yeah,
it's about.
let me ask you, Richard, have you always sort of been this conflicted about the situation in Palestine and Israel, or is it sort of something that's evolved over the years?
So to say this conflicted, I think I've always been conflicted about
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And the two things have happened in the last decade or so. One is that my daughter became very active in sort of a profoundly Jewish group that was also profoundly contending with the occupation and trying to create a discussion among American Jews that was safer to have to be critical of it. And I have to acknowledge her work in
Hmm.
helping me feel safer with this conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at because I was wondering if you see that a lot more than you used to. The American Jews being worried about the occupation and sort of protesting the state of Israel and what it's doing in Gaza and in Palestine. And I wonder if that's more of a changing awareness or of a changing, just a little bit more openness. Like, is it something that people always felt, but then are more free to say because of the social pressures have changed? Or is it something that's sort of an evolving consciousness, do you think? I mean, I know it's hard to
Um,
speak for a lot of
yeah,
people,
yeah,
but.
yeah. I'll speak for everybody. Yes, and I do think that there's been a younger generation of Jews who have very systematically tried to open up the conversation. They
Mhm.
know it's been happening. They had it with their parents. Their parents were, like I've been, critical of this. And what these younger people have done is systematically open up the conversation. And I think a lot of what you're seeing has to do with the organizational work of younger organized Jews to make this conversation happen publicly.
Hmm. Well, why don't you go ahead and read this? I'll put it up on the screen for everybody at home, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, will do. An American Jew fails to make sense of the carnage in Gaza. 4-year-old Sarah of Gaza can't feel her legs. Her brother can't forget the roof falling. Their father, Sahir, can't find a way to help either of them. And I can't stop crying any more than I can stop being a Jew, any more than I can forget the hunger that claws at my gut on a fast day, any more than I can stop a building from collapsing on a child in Gaza. Out my window, I see a red-winged blackbird harrying a vulture who can't stop being a vulture set upon by a blackbird, who can't help being a blackbird harassing a vulture, who can't stop eyeing the mama bird's gape-mouthed nestlings. I am neither vulture nor redwing, nor am I a Jew, at least according to Genesis 1:26, which says on the sixth day God created humans, nothing about Palestinians and Jews. And line 21 didn't say on the fifth day God created blackbirds and buzzards, just non-specific winged things. Yet I see in the trees outside my window one biblically unspecified species that can't resist tormenting another, making sense of the never-ending contest among our tribes by counting dead Gazans and Israelis is like trying to understand the Bible by counting its words, then dividing by the pieces of shrapnel lodged in little Sarah's spine, or the tally of rockets that rained on Israel last week, or the count of families fearing eviction from Sheikh Jarrah, or the sum of all Arabs driven from their homes, or Jews from theirs, or the two fingers, blackened and scarred, Sarah raises, smiling as she says to the reporter, I am strong. But here we are, smile and shrapnel, blackbird and buzzard, the fifth day and the sixth, and then the seventh, when God said, fuck it, you guys figure it out. We didn't, which is ironic because my tribe worked out a lot of shit like welcome the stranger, and love thy neighbor, and don't covet or murder or lie about anyone. We did just fine, except for the times it felt like every goddamn person in the world wanted to burn us or drive us away. Yet as soon as we found refuge in a land already inhabited, built that place in our own image, we turned into a covetous sort. Tonight at Shabbat, my 4-year-old grandson Jude, dressed in lavender, twirls and tumbles about the room, sparks like stars in the candlelight. I recall a video of Sarah from the day before the bombs fell. She shows off her pink Eid dress. Her eyes smile deep chocolate brown like Jude's. I turn away and dream of a future. At a feast, I am arm in arm with Sahir as our two dancers swirl in a blur of scarves, purple and pink.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Richard. Just such a moving poem. Both the story itself of Sarah, and then the conflict that the internal conflict that comes out through that poem. It just really was really moving to me. I hope everybody appreciates it too. Thanks so much for sharing it.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Talk to you later. It was Richard Westheimer with An American Jew Fails to Make Sense of the Carnage in Gaza. That'll be Tuesday's poem at rattled.com. And now today's poem, unfortunately, Marissa Glover could not join us today. But this was the poem Look, and I'll read her note first. This is today's poem at rattled.com. Another heartbreaking poem. There's a couple of them today. Marissa Glover says, I can't stop thinking about Aiden Leos, about his last words, about his mom, about simply driving to school and all the seemingly insignificant decisions made along the way. So much of this world makes no sense to me, and this poem kind of has that feeling of senselessness, talking in circles, living in circles, with each character always ending up in the same sad spot. It shouldn't be this way. And the story, I don't know if you caught it, was down in Orange County in Southern California, and I don't know if this will show. But in a sort of a road rage incident, this little boy was shot through the trunk of the car. Somebody who was like upset at the driver shot at the car and killed a little 6-year-old boy that was driving to school. It's a really heartbreaking story there. And, if you drive around Southern California, you can kind of see how it happens. There's a lot of rage, especially, recently as the traffic comes back to the pre-COVID levels. We're not used to driving like crazed people anymore. And this is this just heartbreaking poem by Marissa Glover, Look. And I'll just have to read this for Marissa since she couldn't join us today. Look. The bullet was not meant for the boy. It was reflex, retaliation, a warning of bad things a man might do, can do, will do if you make him angry enough. The bullet was meant for the boy's mom, for being a bad driver, a bad woman, one who needs to learn some respect. Think of the bird she could have shot with his kind of ammunition. But the man missed the mark, as people full of rage often do. See the bird on the ground, slowly picked apart by teeth. See the flecks gutted and stuffed for cabin walls, where they look in flight. See all the boys whose tummy hurts. See the moms whose fisted shirt cannot stop the bleeding. See all the moms whose tummy is not bleeding but hurting, not hurting but empty, but empty, but empty, not empty, but empty. Like the shell of a bird once feathered, once flying, now hollowed with nothing left but an unseeing socket in the middle of the street. And that, once again, was today's poem from Rattle.com, Marissa Glover's poem, Look. And now let's open up the Poets Respond Live lines a little bit. And let's see. We'll try to find poets who definitely have Poets Respond poems for the first half an hour. And I don't know, we'll get to one or two every week, and then we will, if you don't get in, you have open lines later. Now let me put up the numbers on the screen. This is how you join. First of all, just email your poem to openmic@rattle.com. That's openmic@rattle.com, so I can show it on the screen. And then send me a chat message over Skype to Rattle Poetry, all one word. That's Rattle Poetry, all one word. And that will put you on the call list. Over the phone, call in 818-850-7727. Let it ring a couple times, then hang up, and I will call you back when the time is right. So let's go to a caller, and let's see. Bill Friedman is here, and he has, I think, a poem responding to the supermoon. Sort of lighten up the subject matter a little bit. Let me see. Yeah, Friedman. Yeah, here we go. So this is Inflated Moon. We'll call up Bill Friedman right now. Hey, Bill, are you there?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Okay, fine, thank you. Not so bad. Good weather. Peace. No shells falling. No bombs falling.
Well, that's good to hear. Very good to hear.
You bet. Yeah.
What poem do you have for us? You had something, Inflated Moon. I have. Tell us a
Right.
little bit about what it's about.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's something called the supermoon that appears in the sky, I think once every year, but maybe less frequently. I'm not sure. And it's for some reason 7% larger and 15% brighter than the normal full moon. Because of the atmospherics or its position or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the elliptical orbit. It's a closer pass than it usually is. So it's, I don't know how many miles, but it's a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bigger just because it's a little closer.
Uh-huh.
And up here in the mountains where I live, it's so bright that you could read a book by the moonlight. It's
Wow.
kind of impressive.
Wow. Yeah. It's really awesome. It really is. And I remember sitting in my car, watching it, looking at it. I think this was a couple of years ago, and just being awed, just being astonished that this thing is really an imposing looking object in the sky. It looks menacing and beautiful all at once, like some women.
Okay, so why don't you read this poem? This is Inflated Moon. Go ahead whenever you're ready. I'll put it up on screen.
Okay. So, okay. Inflated moon. I'm bowled over when the moon, lower than it should be, is something more, bigger than you've ever seen it. Must have grown over days somehow, large as Earth at least, maybe Saturn. And watching hangs its funhouse mirror face over the trees and rooftops like the superhero's clownish nemesis, back for another fiendish try. While you were brushing your teeth, downing your oatmeal, working on a busted pipe or manuscript, eyeing the woman who just shouldn't look and dress like
the call
ache as though. Can you hear me?
Yeah, why don't you take it from while you were brushing your teeth? The call dropped for a second.
Oh, okay. It's okay now?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. While you were brushing your teeth, downing your oatmeal, working on a busted pipe or manuscript, eyeing the woman who just shouldn't look and dress like that, walking past your desk or manhole, knowing the ache as always, washing it down again with coffee and a tuna melt for lunch, a tolerably marinated slab of salmon with your wife and sons, 7, 9, and 12 for dinner, and being annoyed, content, and finally a little grateful. You had no idea the moon was crouching furtively behind an arras of late summer light, growing, pumping itself up like an air mattress, mumbling some unpronounceable 20-letter word backwards, or reciting 7 times an eerie cryptic formula that inflates it 10 times its normal size, ready for night. Makes you realize, not only do you hurt the one you love, you knew that, but the one you love and thought loved you, the one whose middle, full, and quarter name is love, the moon, for heaven's sake, could turn on you, threaten with its cycloptic mass to pull the Atlantic over the entire eastern seaboard like Montana over a newborn chick and drown us all. Or if not, just hang there, flashing its outsized, anguished grimace, as though this time, not sweetness, strength, but all Earth's long accumulated pain and insult had rolled into a cratered ball that would barrel any minute through that flimsy line of half-lit high-rise buildings and flatten everything to where you're sitting in your parked car, shaking, gawking. Also, how magnificent fear, if you can just get hold of it, if you're blessed with a little time, a life to stare at death and look away, can be.
Excellent poem. That was William Friedman with Inflated Moon. Thanks so much for sharing that, Bill.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks a lot. Be well.
Yeah, you too. Take care. It was William Friedman with Inflated Moon. Let's see. We have 8 minutes till we go to this week's guest. I think maybe that'll be it for the callers right now. And then, but if you'd like to join in, please do join in at the second hour of the show. The same way as always, we'll get to a whole bunch of other people. Whoever's around then. I wanted to share, though, it's the 7th anniversary of Poet Respond Live. And it started out, I'll tell you how it started. June 1st was the first, June 1st, 2014 was the first time that we published a Poet Respond Live poem. And it was in response, actually, to, I don't know if you remember, there was a mass shooting, Elliot Rodger at UC Santa Barbara. Killed a whole bunch of people. What do they call him? I can't remember what the word is for those hateful, misogynistic people. But Elliot Rodgers had a long YouTube manifesto that he published. And Seth Abramson wrote a remix using the last words of Elliot Rodgers and put it on the Huffington Post. This was, here, I'll put that on screen right now. This was the last words of mass murderer Elliot Rodgers remixed into poetry. Seth believes in a kind of meta-modernism, is what he calls it, which is where is sort of using a lot of found poetry and remixing to change the context. He's one of those experimental type poets. So he's gone on to do a lot more political stuff lately. But this was what he did with Elliot Rodgers' last words. He took the transcript and sort of remixed it to say something a little different. And I just thought when I read this, I mean, bless Seth Abramson. He's a good, great guy, interesting person too. But I just thought that poetry should be doing a better job of being poetry in the public than that. It made me think of what poetry could do versus how little it applies to current events and in the news and the way we think about things immediately. Because the problem with poetry is usually you publish something and it takes months and months to have it appear anywhere. And that's the regular publication cycle. And so you can't have poetry responding to current events. And so that day, which was May 25th, 2014, I think the next day it was, I put up a call on Submittable, which we just finally joined, and said, hey, if anybody has any poems about current events, please share them. We'll publish one on Sunday. And that's how Poet Responds started. And the first poem ended up being June 1st, 2014. This was Tree of Wood. And it relates to Elliot Rodgers. After these events, there was a Yes All Women, which was sort of the precursor to Me Too, was trending on Twitter. It was a big Twitter conversation that people were having. Yes, all women are victims of this kind of misogyny. And this was a poem that we published, Instructions by Tria Wood. I'll put it on the screen and let Tria read it. Here we go.
Instructions. Check your front porch for potential attackers before you open the door for any reason. Check your backyard for potential attackers before you open the door to let the dog out. Check your front porch for potential attackers before you open the door to go to your car. Lock and unlock all doors quickly before an attacker has a chance to get you while you're facing the door. Check the path from your front door to your car for potential attackers before walking toward your car. Walk toward your car while checking the yard, your neighbors' yards, and the street for potential attackers. As you walk, keep at least one key poked through your fist so that you can punch an attacker with it. Check under your car, around your car, and in your back seat for potential attackers before you get too close to it. Lock the car doors as soon as you get into your car. Park as close as possible to the office, the store, the gym, so he'll have less chance to attack. Park in a well-lit area so he'll be less likely to attack. Park at the end of the driveway nearest the street so that he can't block your car in. Park at the end of the driveway closest to your front door so that you can get from the car to a presumably safe space as quickly as possible. Set booby traps at all doors and ground floor windows, even if you feel foolish doing so. Keep the porch lights on, front and back at night, so that others can see if someone's trying to get in. Hope they realize that the person trying to get in is not your husband, your date, your boyfriend, your gay friend, your brother, your father, your uncle, your cousin, your handyman, your landlord, or anyone else who might have a legitimate purpose for being there. Know that it could be, has been for others, a husband, a date, a boyfriend, a gay friend, a brother, a father, an uncle, a cousin, a handyman, a landlord, or anyone else who might seem to have had a legitimate purpose for being there. Take self-defense classes because you hope to be able to fight off any of the above or anyone else. If anyone attacks you, yell fire because people will come running to help put out a fire. Change your habits and paths frequently so that you become harder to track. Don't take any drinks that haven't been poured in your presence. Don't ever stop looking at your drink. Scrutinize your wardrobe and second-guess the fact that you wear makeup. Scrutinize your last few Facebook posts, tweets, and email messages to see whether they could be construed to make you seem insane, prone to lying, or promiscuous. When someone arouses your suspicion, respond politely. Lighten up. Smile. Realize it's just a joke. Get a sense of humor. Who do you think you are, you fucking bitch? You bitch. You ugly bitch. You fat, ugly bitch cunt. You fat, ugly bitch cunt who needs to be fucked. You fat, ugly bitch cunt who needs a fat dick to shut her up. You bitch cunt so fat and ugly you can't even get raped.
And that was Tria Wood with the very first Poets Respond poem ever published, Instructions, after the Yes All Women hashtag and the conversation that surrounded that. I still remember that line. I never heard this before, but if anyone attacks you, yell fire because people will come running to help put out a fire. I mean, what a line, what a thought, what a world where that's the case, where fire is something better to yell. It's a powerful poem by Tria Wood. I should have warned everybody about the language, maybe, but turn down your your thing if you have kids around or something like that. But poetry uses all sorts of language, and that was a very, very powerful poem by Tria Wood. Now we're going to take a quick break, and we'll call up Supriya Kaur Dhaliwal, today's guest, and we'll be back in just a moment. And then after an hour, we'll go back to the open lines, and anybody who would like to share poems can share poems using the open line email address and phone number and Skype, whatever you'd prefer. But for now, let me call up Supriya, and I will be right back. And we're back with Supriya Kaur Dhaliwal on the line. Supriya had a poem in Rattle number 70, this winter's issue. Supriya was born in the Himalayan town of Palampur, India. She studied at St. Bede's College, Trinity College in Dublin, Queen's University in Belfast. In 2018, she was one of the 12 poets selected for Poetry Ireland's introduction series. She's the 2021 Charles Wallace India Trust Fellow at the University of Kent, and her newest book, I'll put it on the screen right now, or her first book, I should say, is right here. This is The Yak Dilemma, a beautifully produced and very interesting book by McKenna Books, right here. And here she is, Supriya Kaur Dhaliwal. Hello, Supriya. I'm doing excellent. How are you doing tonight? And so it's what time is it there? It's like 9:30.
Yeah, it's 9:30 p.m. here.
Yeah. So do you want to start us out with a poem?
Yeah, I will actually read the opening poem in the book,
Okay,
Meet
perfect.
Me in the Morning on No Man's Land.
Okay.
Meet me in the morning on no man's land, where there are no magpies, no ravens, no candles, no kettles, no cups, no saucers, no sun, no moon, no light, no darkness. Yet it is morning, but mornings on no man's land are different from the casual mornings we wake up to. Meet me in the morning where heads float and so do our hearts, where there is no gravity and the only thing that keeps us grounded is the fact that we are together and it is that time of the morning. Meet me in the morning when I will whisper these floating words into your ears, words that will float in the air, but you will float to catch them, and I will end up chasing you, floating like those bubbles in the beer we drank last night. Meet me in the morning on no man's land where skins lose their color, where we are not white nor brown or black, but just the shade of our most loved color. I will be lilac and you can be that shade of yellow you like. Everyone will qualify to be a person of color. Meet me in the morning and come as the image of an image I have of you, hand over hand, knee over knee. In that bleeding memory, our bodies are countries we trespass to walk from yes to yes. You convince me if we can substitute an ampersand for a comma, then it belongs there. Meet me in the morning on no man's land. We will create a daisy chain of ampersands on no man's land. Thank you.
And that was Meet Me in the Morning on No Man's Land, the opening poem from The Yak Dilemma. And it's a great sort of setup to the themes in the book and the way you go about approaching those themes. It's a very experimental sort of style. It's a very free-flowing, a lot of allusions, a lot of playing with text and visual, how the poems look on the page. Do you want to just talk a little bit about, what that no man's land means to you? Because it seems like that is so central to the concept of the book. Like that's sort of the place. The book feels like, to me, reading it, a sort of search for home, and maybe the no man's land. I mean, and not to project too far into what you're trying to do, but the no man's land feels like sort of the giving up of the search for it and like accepting of the transience of home or something like that. I don't know. How do you conceive of that? And what were your what were you obsessed with while writing the book?
Great question. There's a lot to unwrap there. No man's land. I feel like, especially in reference to this poem, no man's land can mean different things at different points, considering how we are living politically, how we are living socially at different times of just whatever's going on. Like, when I wrote that poem, I was living between Ireland and Belgium, and Brexit was the talk of the town. And if I had to rewrite the same poem in 2021, I think I would place it in the context of the pandemic and whatever is going on. Whatever politically goes on or socially goes on, it impacts a lot. It has a great impact on our writing. And I feel like in this case, in this poem, I feel like I'm placing all the anxieties of identity, home, exile in no man's land, and I'm placing them in one place that cannot be home so that I can talk about them. And that place for me there is no man's land. And I think this is a very important poem for the Yak Dilemma, because I think after I wrote it, it was much clearer to me what I was trying to do. And what I was obsessed with was, while writing the Yak Dilemma, is definitely homes, but not just my homes, other people's home as well. What home means to other people, what home means to people I spend my daily lives with, what home means to people whose work I connect with, like houses of famous writers and artists. All that was on my mind. And I think I wanted to create a journey in which I was meeting different homes at different points. And I think that was very important to me.
Yeah. And you've traveled so much. I mean, you've been, and right now you're in your hometown of Palampur, India, which is like sort of right at the base of the Himalayas there in northern India. But you've been through, poems in this book at least, have been through Cairo. You studied in Ireland. Do you think that your travels have anything to do with poetry? Like, is there a reason that you are traveling all over the world? And does that have anything to do with what you're trying to do in a poem?
So I think I say this a lot, but I think poetry has made travel possible for me. I think the first time I left my country on my own was to attend a poetry conference. And when I went to Cairo, my prime motive was to read some poems there and like talk to poets. And when I've been studying in Ireland, I feel like I've been studying poetry there and, connecting with the poetry of the poets who wrote there specifically, who wrote specifically in Dublin or Belfast. So I think I feel like poetry helps me think in different ways. Even when I'm living my real life, poetry plays a crucial role. It helps me navigate through life better. Mm-hmm. That's how I put it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you remember how you started writing poetry? Was it at a very early age? Did you find a poem that sort of inspired you to participate in it? How did you fall into poetry in the first place?
So I found poetry quite early on in my life, and I think I was just doing it at the back of my school notebooks just because, and like hiding it because I didn't know anyone who did that sort of thing. And I didn't know I could like do it for the rest of my life, or if that was something I would like to do when I'm older. I had no idea back then. But I started writing quite young, and I used to spend a lot of time with books as a kid, so I think poetry was just the right medium for me. And I've written a lot since, but I think I was in high school, and I got a poem of mine published in a newspaper, and they used to run a column for poems by school and college kids. It did no longer run it, but back in the day it was like I used to read it every week religiously, and I really wanted, when I was like writing all these poems at the back of my notebooks and like sort of like and I didn't know what I'm doing, but I really wanted to see my work there. So I just sent them. I had to post it. I remember my dad posted it for me. So send them a poem. And I don't even know what was like how long I would have had to wait for it to hear back on decision or anything like that. But I never heard back from the newspaper. But one day it was just in the paper. So I was like, I think that was sort of the affirmation that made all the things that happen in the future possible for me. And I think it was the right motivation, because I think when you are that age, it really matters. Like if you're doing something and you're encouraged to do that, you want to do more of that. And so that's how.
Do you remember anything? Do you remember anything about the poem? What it was about?
It was I do remember it. I had titled it Hope, but the newspaper changed it to Power of Hope. That's all I remember. And it rhymed. It really rhymed. So,
Very cool. Well, let's hear a couple more poems. What do you want to read next?
I think I will read a couple of poems from the first sections. The book is in 4 sections. And I will now read No One Wants to Think of Marigolds in September. It's on page 16. The poem sort of takes place in London. No one wants to think of marigolds in September. Most passengers who alighted from the train walked into the other direction as I sheltered myself from the rain and the hullabaloo of the pre-autumnal madness, the pumpkin spice pleasures in Starbucks, the squawking of birds preparing for winter migration. and the busker seeking validation for his terrible cover of Bowie's Space Oddity. Near the red light at the intersection with Moorgate Street, a young man handed me a flyer for 2-for-1 cocktails in a nearby pub, which was once called the Swan and Hoop, once upon a time where Keats was born. These immortal poets are unthinkable in London rain, except in the vicinity of the houses that mark their birth or death, where their pain and delight become products of our imagination. While I got lured by a flyer advertising day drinking with Keats's Coast, somebody tripped over a bed of soggy marigold petals, certain that they offered no sense of harm. It was September, after all, when flowers, even the ones without a murky past like lifeless nomads, belong only to the ground.
And that was No One Wants to Think of Marigolds in September from the Yak Dilemma. Um, that sort of brings up something I was wondering about. Like, what brought you to Ireland, and what was it that drew you to the poetry that you're drawn to?
I think the journey began when I was thinking of what to do after studying English literature at college. I think one of the modules that I enjoyed the most was Irish literature, and I think I read a lot of Beckett as a final year college student, and sort of was like tracing what Beckett did in his life. And Beckett was born in Ireland, went to Trinity College, Dublin, and all those things. So yeah, I just like sort of got drifted into what was happening there, and I was trying to follow it all online. But it was like really not that complicated. I thought that I would like to study more of this, so I applied to this program at Trinity College, Dublin, which was a postgraduate program in Irish writing, and I got accepted and just like came to Dublin and didn't leave for a few years. That was all.
And so, how long did you live in Ireland?
Like 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you want to read another poem?
Yeah, I will read the poem on page 18. It's called Arabic Lessons. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Wa alaikum assalam, and peace be upon you too. We were 10 strangers scattered in a seminar room in a university in Belfast. Our teacher asked us, why were we there? I said I grew up in India around people who spoke Urdu fluently and thought I might be able to pick up Arabic quickly. You know, it is that sort of thing. I want to read Mahmoud Darwish's poetry in his mother tongue and live in Beirut, Cairo, Kuwait without having to bargain for the chandeliers or dates, without letting anyone know I'm a foreigner. So you're not a journalist? No, I'm a poet. How long have you lived in Northern Ireland? A few months. He laughed. For 10 weeks, 10 of us sat once a week in the same seminar room, waiting for Arabic to come to us naturally. Masalama, goodbye. Nothing came more naturally than the phrase forbidding farewell, our minds ready to depart wherever we had come from. Masalama.
That was Arabic Lessons from the Yak Dilemma. If anybody has any questions, I should say, please do leave them in the chat windows on either Facebook or YouTube, and I will pass them along to Supriya. Supriya, can you talk a little bit about what your how you approach a poem? Because you do have a style that's very free and moving from concept to concept. I think you have a sense of trust that the reader will follow along, and a willingness to sort of depart from narrative and sort of take leaps in different directions. How do you approach writing a poem in that way?
Yeah, so I think when I'm reading a poem, like I'm waiting for it to talk to me, and at different points when I'm reading it, on different occasions, it could speak to me in different ways. And while I'm writing a poem, I feel like there are two ways of going about it. Sometimes there's something in my head that I really want to get out of. So I do a lot of note taking. I make a lot of lists. And that's how I approach the process of writing poems. And sometimes it really is like when I have enough lists ready, I have a poem ready. And yeah, that's one way of doing it. But sometimes mostly when I do it in one go, that is when I think of, is the reader trusting me regarding what I'm doing, or can I trust the reader here regarding what I'm trying to do? And it's sort of like sitting in a room with a lot of windows and leaving all those windows open and just like seeing what happens to the things inside the room, or maybe like thinking of praying and trying to find a gender neutral god or something, like not being very successful at doing so.
Well, those are great metaphors. It's really interesting that you mentioned writing from lists, because I hadn't really, we hadn't encountered a poet who does that. And then just last week, Karen McCadden was the guest, and she was talking about writing from lists too. So now I'm kind of more curious about this list as a generative process. So she said she would have just sort of pick out words that she wants to include in the poem. Is that the kind of thing that you do? How do you like form the list that you'll turn into a poem?
I think it's seldom the words to me, but it's more like someone said something, somebody said to me, or something I saw, or something I read somewhere, or something that I read somewhere that made me think of something. And like, it's just like an accumulation of a lot of thoughts. But I think it's so different during the pandemic now. But when I used to go about my day and I was not always in a lockdown, I feel like it was more like a record of everything that I'm trying to do through the day. So yeah, I feel like when I was like quite young, I can't quite remember who said this to me, but I think I was in Trinity when someone said this to me. I think I had gone to a talk by one of these really renowned professors, and he said that to become a writer, you just need one thing. You need to like buy a diary, which is not longer than the size of your hand, and you just like always need to write in it whenever something occurs to you. And I don't do that. I try to do that, but I don't always do that. But I think the process of list taking is very similar to that. And I might not always write it down in my diary, but I might be like taking a note on my phone, or like might be scribbling it on the bookmark and the book I'm reading, or whatever situation I'm in.
That's interesting. Do you think that the reason that works has more to do with noticing? Like if you're going to be writing stuff down in a diary and making lists of things throughout the day, you pay more attention to what you're doing throughout the day, right? Mm-hmm. Or do you think that it's just that you remember what you noticed already? Like, do you think does it change your perception to know that you will be writing a poem possibly about whatever you encounter at any moment?
I think so. And I think like that sort of practice also keeps you grounded in the real world, because otherwise it is too easy to get driven away by your feelings while you're writing something personal or something that matters to you. That's why you're writing it. So yeah, I think that is important.
Well, let's hear another poem. What do you want to read next?
I will read the title poem, The Yak Dilemma. Okay. The Yak Dilemma. While learning what different animals were supposed to be called, the first animal I learned to name was a yak. My nanny, whom I am told was from Chamba, took the yak business quite seriously. She made sure I knew we were no flatlanders. Whenever I draw a line on the paper, I think of her telling me that this line is River Ravi, around which several yaks graze. Somewhere between learning about yak milk and yak wool, today I stand in a labyrinth of questions. In a poetry workshop in a country with no yaks, I am told yaks can only be found in Nepal. In another tea house setting in the same country, I am told a yak is a raccoon. Another human contradicts this notion and adds that a yak is something like a furry cow, often related to the Sherpas and probably Tibet. I put kibosh on the discussion before another human tries to venture in with his own theory of Himalayas and yak meat. Like the snowflakes from colorless skies that fall like the bullets ricocheting in a war zone, kissing February's hopeless crowns, I often wonder, where have I truly come to?
And that was the title poem, The Yak Dilemma. I love the you have flatlanders, that you talk about flatlanders in your town, because we're up in the mountains too, and yeah. And every time there's some kind of reason for the flatlanders to come, everybody says, the flatlanders are coming, hide, Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're always just up to no good because they don't understand a mountain life at all.
Yeah.
So I guess
Yeah.
it's the
There was
same.
always that dichotomy.
Yeah. Do you feel I don't know, like sharing your perspective from that area is a part of what you're doing too. Is home is sharing home with the rest of us part of your goals as a writer?
To some extent, yes, but also I'm very cautious of the fact that I'm still learning what life here is like because I left here when I was quite young, and ever since I came home last year, um, after the pandemic hit our lives, I think this is the longest I've ever been home. So I think I'm also learning how to be home at my own home while I'm writing about home because I've never been home for that long. And yeah, so to some extent, yes, I think.
Um, and so one of the things that stands out in this book, although none of the poems have or only the first poem has been sort of in the style of the block that you do, but there are a few poems in that style where the way that it's laid out on the page really matters, and there's some long poems that the book turns sideways to make sure you fit the length of the line in. There are a lot of things like that going on throughout the book. There's also I noticed that the poems always start on the left-hand side of the page so that they always appear, and you never have to turn the page to get to the next poem, except for the longer than 2-page poems. So what do you think about the layout of a poem? How aware of you or of that are you as you're writing the poem? How it's going to look? And was this a lot of your design, laying the book out this way? Was that something that you were after, or was it more the press?
So I think it matters a lot to me how a poem sits on a page, and I do spend a lot of time thinking, how can I do it the best? And when I'm doing that block sort of thing, it's more like I'm approaching the poem as a concrete text. Well, there are moments in the book when there are a lot of gaps between different movements in a same line or even the same stanza. And I feel like how I approach time when I'm writing a poem is very important to me. And when I'm writing a poem in the present time, I am talking of something from the past, or maybe I'm willing to talk something from the future. It's very important for me how I place that past and future in something that I'm writing in the present. So I think those gaps help me fragment the memories that I am willing to place in the poem, and also different movements from different times that whatever's like that's going on there. And each new poem starting on the left side of the page, I think that's like more of like a design approach to the book, because like when we were trying to place different poems in the book, I think that's how it worked the best without jumbling up the whole thing, because each poem looks so different in the book. It was very important for me not to overwhelm the reader by just looking at it. Like imagine like if I see this book in a bookshop and each poem looks so different from each other, I would be like, why does it look the way it looks? Like that would be my first question. So I was very aware of the fact that the book is loaded with such movements. So it was very important for me and my designer and my publisher to place it in such a way that it's inviting for the reader, and the reader doesn't get blocked away when they see it at first.
Yeah, and in a similar sort of way, what was the process of putting the cover art together? And there's this. I'll put it on the screen for everybody to see. The cover art is this sort of map-like, and I'm not sure what it is. It's very interesting, though. What is that, and how did you choose that as the cover? And the colors make it really pop, too. It's a great cover design. But at first I thought it might be India on its side, but then the Sri Lanka would be in the wrong place, so that wasn't right. And then I looked to see if it was your home state, maybe, but that wasn't it. And I don't know, so I couldn't figure out what the cover actually was, but it's so striking. So how did you choose the cover, and what is it?
So when my publisher sent the manuscript to a designer first, I think one of the recurring themes was maps and making a map of your own while studying for whatever is going on there. So maps were integral, and we were like, yeah, the whole structure of the book is a lot like creating a map of your own. So the designer did create a map of his own. So this is actually a hybrid of India and Ireland's map.
Okay.
Joined together, like on the front back, it's like different. But with the colors, I feel like this was our second choice, the current color scheme of the book, but I think it's better than our first choice. So whatever happened, it happened for good. But I think the colors were so important. I think a few days ago, someone asked the designer of the book if the yellow on the cover is actually the yellow in Maybe in the Morning or No Man's Land. I think when Patrick at Frontwood's design, while he was designing this book, I think he really read it and approached it very well and sort of understood what I was trying to do there. And we had like a few options to look at, but I think this spoke to us like the best. And yeah, so we made a beautiful book.
Yeah, it's a wonderful choice. What were the original colors?
It was like a fluorescent, like kind of alongside like a fluorescent peach and like a really pale indigo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think this is it's a great choice. It really makes the book stand out. And it's so cool to see that I was interpreting it right, because I was sort of looking for India and Ireland in both of these maps, but then it wasn't, it's its own place. It's such a cool concept. I like that. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. People are just enjoying the poems right now, but let's hear another one.
Yeah, I will read the poem on page 36, hotel poem, Fatih, Istanbul. I eat my Turkish breakfast in a plate that is an imitation of Byzantine mosaics in the Hagia Sophia. Mehmet, the server, asks me if home for me is Al-Hind. When I say yes, it is, he marvels at the grandeur of the Taj Mahal, where both of us have not been yet. Mehmet tells me about the blue masjid's 6 minarets and asks if the azan here reminds me of the azan in the Jama Masjid in Delhi. I admit that I wish I knew, as I have never been to Jama Masjid either. However, Delhi is nothing like Istanbul. It does not rain in Istanbul in July like the way it does in North India. Here, I wake up to a shining view of the Bosphorus and asleep to it, feeling the weightlessness of the sea taking over every night.
That was Hotel Poem, Faith, Istanbul. And when I read that poem, I wanted to ask, what do you miss most about India since you travel so much? Is there something I wondered if it was the rain? Is there something that you feel like you miss when you're in Ireland or in Turkey or Cairo or wherever you are?
Yeah, I think the way it rains in Palampur is unlike anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. So I definitely do miss that. I think I do just miss the mountains and my family whenever I'm not home, because I think calling the entire country home is still a very big statement to me. But when I refer to home, I think I refer to the home in the mountains.
Yeah. Being at the base of the mountains there, mm-hmm. With the monsoon, it must be like constant downpours, right?
Yeah, for months, day and night.
Mm-hmm. And do you like when you hear like a pouring rain elsewhere? Do you sort of, does it bring you back?
Sometimes, but it used to rain so much in Ireland as well, and especially when I was living in Belfast, it's like further up north, and it used to rain even more there. But that rain's so different. Sometimes it might be raining outside, and you don't even realize it's raining. But when it rains here, it is a big event. Like the whole landscape changes, and the whole it's very different. We have not normalized rain, even if it rains so much here. Uh-huh. Like we will, if it starts to rain here now, we will talk about it for 3 days.
Yeah, well, here where I am, it rains. After May 1st or so, it won't rain again until September or October.
Oh, that's long.
Yeah, it's depressing, I think. But everybody else is happy. Like people love Southern California, but I don't know. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of the state of poetry in India. It's something I've tried to sort of understand for a long time, and I can't even get my mind around it, or get a grasp of what the poetry scene or what the poetry community is like there. We're doing a tribute to Indian poets coming up in the fall, and we've published a whole bunch of poets. But what is poetry? What place does poetry have, contemporary poetry in society in India? It was really cool to hear that it was being published in children's poetry in a newspaper, but no longer. And I don't know. I can't get my mind around where poetry's place is in the culture in India. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it is very segmented. When we are talking of a poetry community, there is no one community here. There are multiple communities that coexist. And that is because there are so many languages that are being spoken here. There's work being produced in each language. And I feel like where I place myself is that I am an Indian poet writing in English. And I would pick that community for myself. And I feel like lots happened. A lot is happening. I feel like the way when I was in Ireland, like there was a group of Belfast poets that sort of like set the ground for future generations, and like people from outside, people from Belfast, they all want to be a part of that community. And I feel like that happened in India, in Bombay. Like ages ago, when people like Don Morris and all of them were like producing work there. And I feel like a lot of contemporary poets followed the suit, and like great things are happening there. But I think that's like the only one city where I can think of a community that has existed for over generation for Indian poetry that's being written in English. And like the and with different languages, I feel like it's very easy to get lost among what happens here. So that's why it can appear very confusing for anyone who's outside. But I could also like live and like write here without being a part of a community, because like it's a small town, and like whatever community I'm part of, it's like somewhere else. Like I would go to Delhi to hang out with a bunch of poets, or like I would travel to Mumbai to do that, but I seldom do that here until someone comes to me. So I feel like it's very easy to do that without caring what's happening in the rest of the world. But there's so much good contemporary stuff happening. Like I feel like I always wait for the Bombay Literary Magazine to publish their new issue. I think I get introduced to the best of new poets who are writing currently through that magazine. And I myself was published in that magazine a few years ago when I had just started to put together this book quite seriously. And it was a big moment for me, because it felt like, I was not living in India at that moment, but I was living elsewhere. But it made me so happy that my work was being published in my home country and will be read by poets who lived there, who like produce work there, who publish work there. So yeah, definitely, there's a lot that's going on around. And a few of the editors who are associated with the Bombay Literary Magazine, over the pandemic, they started the quarantine train. So it's just like a bunch of poets meeting on Zoom twice a week, and they do really cool events. Like they would have guest speakers every now and then. They even do workshops, and yeah, but it's all happening on Zoom. So what a community feels like is definitely evolving and evolve in years to come. But I feel like there's so much going on here. Like every major city in India has their own literary festival. Every major city in India has something different going on. And I feel like when we talk of the poetry community in India, it's very segmented. We're talking of multiple communities. And I think it'll be easier to talk of one community than like talking of it as a whole, because there's just so much going on.
Is there any sort of movement to get more translations, so there's a universal, maybe in English or anything like that? Like so the different languages aren't so fragmented. And do you do any translation? Are you interested in that at all?
I try to, but I think I am still a learner. If I cannot like talk of myself as a translator at all. I've tried to do that a few times, but I feel like I still have a long way to go. I'm still like learning how to approach translation, and yeah. So, I feel like there are a few publication houses which are solely dedicated to put works out there, which are works of translation from regional languages into English, and also vice versa, like translating things from English to all the regional languages. And I think Seagull Books in Kolkata is doing great work on that, and like all genres, like poetry, fiction, nonfiction. And yeah, I think a lot's happening there. And I feel like a lot happens on small scale as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, like small scale magazines, periodicals, that sort of thing.
Do any mainstream presses, do newspapers still do that? You mentioned that the one that you published in doesn't do that anymore, but do other magazines or newspapers do that?
I can't really think of a poetry column in any newspaper. Yeah, I think like free speech is like at such a danger in a country, and it has been like that for a few years now, sadly. And I feel like as a child growing up here, I think about this a lot. I feel like I felt like I had a lot more freedom to speak up through any medium, whether it's poetry, theater, or anything like that. Even when I was in college, there was culturally a lot more going on than now. I feel like a lot of the stuff that happens now is very censored. And, I feel like we used to approach whatever we had to do with a freer mind. And probably it's still happening, but I feel like it has changed a lot over the last few years.
Yeah. Do you censor what you write at all because of that, or is your approach more just to publish what you're writing in other countries?
I have never really thought of that, because I've sort of like, whenever like I'm sending work out or anything, I just like send it out to where all the places where I like to read their work, like all the magazines I like to read. I try to understand a magazine first before sending work out to them. And I think when it comes to censoring, I think our generation's still doing it a little less, but I'm really scared for the generations to come, who might have to do it a lot more than we have ever had to do. And yeah, so I think a lot about that in those terms.
Well, let's hear another poem. I lost track again of how many poems we've read so far, but I don't know if you want to
read 4.
Okay.
I'll read more.
Okay.
I will read the poem on page 54, Trading Himalayan Saffron for Homesickness. It will take us 50 minutes to reach the nearest airport. Mom will insist that I sit in the front seat. Dad will drive. We will try our best to take care of the small talk business. My eyes will twitch with a tear or two, like the wick that is not the correct size for the candle. The winter silverware on the hills won't have corroded yet. It could take me from 6 months to a year to make the journey back. I know Mom will have secretly packed enough saffron for me to last a lifetime. Yet she will say, "Take some more kesar for the road. We don't know when we will see you next."
And that was Trading Himalayan Saffron for Homesickness. Do you want to do another one?
Yeah, I will read Housing Crisis on Raglan Road on page 50. Housing Crisis on Raglan Road. During my early teenage years, when I was old enough to learn big words, I thought solitude was solitude, the extra T a sword to cut through a lapsed state of being on one's own. It appears maybe like a briny situation in the mouth that prefers the taste of days spent alone. Was it solitude's better byword for a happier state of mind? Was it a watchword for failed solitude, the worst of all our fears? In Dublin, on a day as grey as if smeared with pewter, I think of Kavanagh while walking through Raglan Road, and his poem of the same name. I think of no kin, no suitor. I think of the debt these houses must have owed to the people who every day in the city seek recruiters for new jobs with no solitude or solitude or abode.
That is Housing Crisis on Raglan Road. And of course, we were talking about before, the sense of home and what home means plays throughout the book so much. I mean, that's a central theme, really. And one of the things that I noticed is that you seem to have a lot of interest in writers' homes and where writers have lived. Can you explain what is it about that makes you interested in I don't know, like what is it about that you're sort of interested in?
I think like if there's like a certain literary figure whose life I want to trace or about whom I want to know more, I think the first thing that I naturally come across is where they lived. And when I see that, I'm like interested in more along this line, like where they lived, how, which street, which house, and so on. And I feel like a lot of this like living suppose if I'm sitting in Palampur and I want to think of Shakespeare's home, the first thing I just like type it on my Google search box and wait for the internet to take me there. But I feel like when I'm doing it for different writers sitting in different places, there's an underlying feeling that I want to be there and like see it myself. How was it like? But I think it's just like the idea. I've been interested in the idea of space that people occupy since very long. And I feel like through these writers and artists, I'm just like doing it in some way, yeah, like a lot of like Leonard Cohen's house in Hydra. I've never been there, but I want to go there. And like, yeah, I feel like a space is so important, a closed space so important when you are trying to think of a literary movement or when you're trying to think of how that work was written, how that work was produced. So yeah, it's I don't have a reason to do it. I just do it. Like I'm just making excuses as to why I do it. I just do it because I like to do it. I used to like to do it a lot more when I was writing the book than now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's how it has been.
So whose houses have you been to? You mentioned Keats. What other houses have you been to, like physically?
Yeah, I've crossed Keats' house, never been in. Yeah, and then there's like Lord Byron and Claire Claremont just going on a holiday. That's a product of my imagination. And then there is the house of Amrita Preetham and Ambrose in New Delhi, which was actually demolished. So when I was trying to think of it, yeah, I didn't like sort of get much, but except this underlying sad feeling that it should have been there, but it's not anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Istanbul has been one city which does a lot of justice to the writers who wrote there. And Primo Loti's house, it's like there's an entire hill named after him, and the house is a good museum. And I feel like these houses are just agents that can do so well to make young people feel that they can write, like they can be big cultural centers. And yeah, I think it's very important to do something with them. I think we can't just let them go. They're too precious to let them go. And I think if it is executed properly, they can do a lot of good to the community.
Yeah, the idea of just caring about the space that we occupy, I think is how you put it. It's something I worry about. Like you mentioned that a lot is going on Zoom, because of the pandemic. And just so much of our sort of consciousness is moving online, which is really not, there's a lot of benefits to it, of course. Like the audience, like we used to have a reading series here in Los Angeles, and only 25 people could fit in the room, and it was a wonderful space for poetry, and it felt great, but it was the reach was limited. And here, 1,000 people or something can listen to this really easily, and so you get that sort of broader reach and the sort of common ground and the sort of like meta space that we're creating online, but we're sort of losing the sense of nature and the sense of like how much place means to us. And I don't know. Do you think that does that have something to do with what you write about? Like trying to preserve that sense of the importance of the spaces we occupy.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of meta space that we are creating on Zoom and everything, this is important to a certain extent, but not at the cost of the physical space, because I still don't think the way we are doing things, it's a very sustainable way of doing things. Like, I feel like if we have to preserve all these little movements, I feel like we can't do that at the cost of what's happening in a physical space. And yeah, I think it's important for us to do it both ways, but not at the cost of each other, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was thinking of something, it just escaped me. But yeah, so it'll come back to me. It was an interesting point. Yeah, I was thinking of graves, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Uh-huh.
Yeah, because like I had not been to a famous person's grave ever,
Oh, really?
like before I moved to Ireland, because yeah, that's like the religion I come from and the religion I grew up in, we don't bury people. So yeah, the first grave of the famous person I went to was like Yeats's grave in near Sligo, and like I went to his grave and sort of didn't know what to do with myself once I'm there. How to like, yeah, well, I was there, but what do I do now? Like, how do I approach the whole thing of like remembering someone that way?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I feel like I'm talking of graves after I'm talking about like physical houses, because it's just, I think it's the idea of space that makes me think about all those things. And there's a poem in the book about visiting Marx's grave in London, Marx's grave. So yeah, that I feel like that has been a lot on my mind too while thinking of space. It's just not a predominant theme in the book, graves, but I do think of that a lot as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that that comparison between the grave site and a house where one place where you're not moving and you're dead, and the other where you lived and were alive, and in a way that the space that you occupied is so much more important to who you were than like where your physical body ended up or something. So that contrast is really interesting.
Yeah, but I feel like the transition, how it happens, is also so important, because you could never know where a person lived in their life, or you could know about multiple places where they live, but there's only one place where they'll finally end up if you think of it. So yeah, the transition's like very, very intriguing.
Yeah, and Nivedita Karthik says, is grave also not a home, a final resting house, but a house nonetheless? Yeah, I mean, there's that too. In a way, our body is a house too. A house for our consciousness. Well, do you want to? Let's see. I think there's 2 more poems you wanted to read. Was that the numbers right? Okay, want to read one more, and then we'll talk a little bit more, and then finish up with the last one.
That sounds good. I will read The Women Who Dine Alone on page 70.
Okay.
I think this was published in the Bombay Literary Magazine for the first time before it made its way out in the world. The Women Who Dine Alone. 1. On my way to a diner on Dame Street, I see 16-year-olds singing Barbie anthem on cobbled streets of Temple Bar, beer cans in their hands. It was like seeing people seeing films in which they wished to be cast as leading actors. On getting to the diner, I sit with my dinner in the first floor sitting area. Watch a woman blow drying another woman's hair inside a third-story Georgian window on the other side. 2. I finish my food quickly, sit there gathering bits for the film I should be writing. My actor, an Irishman who wants to get through the length and breadth of India on trains only. His bed on which he sleeps in Dublin comes from IKEA and is made in China. When he watched Titanic at the Odeon in 1997, he yelled to himself, "For fuck's sake, sink." My actress has traveled to 14 countries to photograph women who dine alone. She wants to beat the single female diner syndrome, dining alone, not a tour de force. She dines alone too, in her country, in 14 countries, not having to come home to cats or dogs. The women who dine alone. They just do. 3. On my way home, I'm told by a friend there is something very English about the way I hold my cigarette between my fingers. I nod, but the words get to my blood and bile. In my dream, his ghost whispers with a lilt of Americanness in my ear, correcting my accent. The following day, I go out wearing the sweet scent of cigarette ashes on my sweater. Table for one, please.
And that was The Women Who Dine Alone, from the Yak Dilemma. Gordon Coppola says, it's so cool to hear the Irish lilt incorporated into the sound of your speech, which is something I noticed too. It's a really interesting blend of accents. It's really cool. How much do you feel like Ireland has been incorporated into your poetry?
A lot of it. I feel like I learned a lot about craft only in Ireland, and I feel like even when I have to learn more about it, I feel like we go back to Irish poets a lot.
Mm-hmm. So what are you writing next? Like what, do you think, I think poets always write from obsessions. And we talked about your obsession with home and the sense of space and no man's land. Do you still feel like that's the same thing that you're obsessed with, that you've figured, or that you still have a lot of stuff to mine out of that concept? Or do you think that, are you moving on to other topics? Like, what are you working on now?
I am actually working on an obsession of house currently, another house. So the foundation poem for that project is actually in the Yak Dilemma. It's called Appointment with Nora Richards. And what I'm doing is, so Nora Richards was an Irish theatre practitioner who lived in a village near my hometown. And she was sort of my introduction to Irish literature when I was very young, and I sort of didn't realize it was happening that way. But yeah, she did a lot of work here. She has her house here, which is still a sort of a cultural center where activities take place. And she has a small amphitheater where she used to do plays with the local community and all of that. So what I'm doing right now is developing a sequence of poems which puts Nora Richards in contemporary settings. So I'm thinking of what Nora would have done if she would have gone out for a coffee, what Nora would have done if she was hailing a cab, and things like that. So I'm having a lot of fun while playing around with what she was, what she could be, and how I know her, how people know her, and all of those things. So yeah, that's sort of the only thing I'm working on right now. But I think I have thought about this project for a long, long time, and I've been unconsciously thinking about this, working towards this for a long time now. It's just that now I've had the time and space to just do that and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. A couple more really quick questions from the audience. So Patricia Rockwood asks, which poets do you just read because you love them? I think, or which poets do you turn to for inspiration, and which poets do you read just because you love them? We always like suggestions.
Okay. So what was the first one?
Which poets do you read for inspiration, and which do you read because you love them? And and I don't know if that's an interesting distinction to make too between the two different types. Do you make that distinction when you're reading?
I think so. I feel like I read like poets like Anne Carson when I'm trying to do both. And I recently thought that maybe she is my literary godmother. Maybe she is. If someone knows her, please tell her. And yeah, I feel like for inspiration, I would even sit down and read Homer, and like I read anything that ranges from Homer to Kieran Carson. But the poets I love, I feel like recently I've really come to love the works of this American Tibetan poet, Sering Wangmo Thapa. Do you know her?
I don't actually know.
I actually met her in Belfast, and it was so interesting because we are talking of home. She grew up like near my hometown, and now she teaches in States, and we met in Belfast, like no place and no common ground for us, but it was very interesting. And that was like sort of my introduction to her work, but I feel like it really spoke to me, like the way she was approaching exile, home, and all those themes. And other contemporary poets I love are Zafar Kunyal, definitely. Been obsessed with whatever new work Zafar puts out there ever since I came to know about his work. And yeah, Rebecca Perry. London-based poet. Really like her work. She has a new book out. It's called Stone Fruit. Can't wait to read it. And in the US, I've also really loved Solma Sharif's work,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't wait for a new book. Yeah.
That's great. So where was it? So Kimberly McNeil mentions your endings are amazing, poem after poem, and I was noticing that too. You really have really good endings. How do you approach the end of a poem, and how do you know that it's finished? Is there a secret to your talent with that?
Ending's so hard. I could sit on a poem for years and not know how to end it. So I think like I do take the endings of my poems seriously, and that's why I struggle with how to end them a lot. But yeah, it's sort of like it has happened to me a lot. I have, even when I was like putting the book together, when I had to send in my first draft, I had all these poems that were just incomplete, or I had like multiple ways to end them, but I had to actually set on one way to end them to move further. So yeah, I think about the endings of poems a lot.
Yeah, and so I think this answers Carlton Johnson's follow question, but he says, do you begin with the ending in mind? Does that ever happen, or is the ending always a surprise?
It seldom happens. I
Yeah.
wish I was that organized, but I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really hard to write. This is an argument that I have with Megan sometimes,
Yeah.
because she thinks that you can't. I think that if you have the ending in mind, it kind of ruins the spontaneity and the creativity of the
Yeah.
poem to be writing
Yeah.
toward a destination. So I specifically try to avoid that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people completely disagree with me and write great poems anyway. So I guess
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
I also feel like I'm really put off by really concrete endings.
Mhm.
I just sort of like feeling when I'm reading a poem that a lot more could happen there, a lot more still happening there,
Mhm.
a lot more's happening in probably a meta space that I don't know.
Yeah. Like sort of there's
I
like a leave them wanting more type.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like exactly. Well, there's just a tiny bit of time left. Do you want to read one last poem?
Yeah, since I'm in Palampur, I will read Room in Palampur. It's on page 78.
Okay.
It was a bit like entering the wrong room in my dream, where I saw you knitting as you sat on the same bed as the woman with a neat bob who was talking on the phone. It could have been an Edward Hopper painting, but I recognized the sheets and the angles at which the light reflected in that room. In the same dream, I watched you sit with my mother as you checked your email, updated your Facebook friends with the misdoings of the government, etc. On waking up, I shouted to ask my mother if you were still in the house, only to realize that I had woken up in a different house in a different country, thousands of miles away from you and my mother, where the sheets are new and the light does not bounce back at familiar angles.
A beautiful poem to end on. That was Room in Palampur from the Yak Dilemma. Thanks so much for being a guest
Thank you.
today,
Thank
Supriya.
you. It was really lovely chatting to you.
Yeah, it was just a great fun talking and really interesting, great poems. Thanks so much for sharing them and being here.
Thank you for making me a part of it. Thank you.
Yep, my pleasure. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was Supriya Kaur Dhaliwal, and once again, her book that we were talking about here is the Yak Dilemma. The Yak Dilemma is available from McKenna Books right there. It's £10 in the UK. A lot of great blurbs here on the back too, and a really cool cover with the created map. You can find more about Supriya's work at her website, which is spelled just like her name here, Supriya Kaur Dhaliwal. For the people just listening, I will spell it. It's Supriyakaurdhaliwal. SupriyaKaurDhaliwal.com. So find more of her work there. Pick up a copy of the Yak Dilemma from McKenna Poetry, and that'd be great. So we're going to move on to the third portion of the show. This is now it's like a trifecta kind of show. There's 3 sections, and the third section is the totally open lines. Now, this week's prompt for the Rattlecast, if you had a prompt poem that you wrote, the prompt for this week was right here. The prompt was to write a poem about a parasite. Be as literal or as figurative as you wish. So if you had your prompt poem, feel free to share it during the open lines, but feel free to share anything. News poems for Poetry Spawn Live that we didn't have time for. That'd be great if you could share any current events-based poems. Those are always fun. Share prompt poems or share anything, something you recently published. How you do that, I'll put this up on the screen again. All you have to do is email it to openmic@rattle.com. That's openmic@rattle.com. Do that right now so it gets to me in time, if you haven't done it already. Then I can show it on screen as you read. Then pick one or the other. Pick either Skype, send me a chat message at Rattle Poetry, all one word, that's Rattle Poetry. Just say hi, I'll wave back. That'll put me on your call list, and I will call you back when it's your turn. The other option is to do it by phone. The phone number is 818-850-7727. That's 818-850-7727. We have someone calling in right now at a 352. We'll get to you for sure. We love first-time callers. We also have Gordon Coppola, Greg Bell, Nivedita Karthik, Julian Matthews, Patricia Rockwood, and that 352 number. So we got a bunch of people lined up for the open lines. I'm going to get stuff situated, let you do that, and get prepared. And I'll be back in just a second. Before I do, let me put next week's guest up on the screen. Next week's guest is going to be Melissa Balmain. Melissa is the editor of Light, the poetry of light verse. I don't like that song. Let me do this one. This is better. Yeah, let's do that one. So, Melissa Balmain is the editor of Light. Her newest book is Walking In on People. That is from Able Muse Press, I believe. She also has... I can't reach it from here. She has a really interesting sort of a children's book for adults that's humorous. She writes humorous verse, and it really interesting talking to her next week about humor in poetry on Rattlecast number 96. That'll be Sunday, June 6th at the new regular time, which will be 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll do a half an hour, once again, of Poetry Spawn Live first, and then we'll do an hour with Melissa. Then we will do open lines as long as we want. So looking forward to doing that. I'm going to take a quick break, stand up and stretch, refresh your drinks, get a new cup of coffee or something. I'll be back in like 30 seconds. Okay. And I'm back. Thanks everybody for letting me stand up and stretch. It's a long time to just sit in one place. I think everybody should stretch up. We should have a group stretch. And what I do is stand up and get all the poems ready from a standing position, which feels much better. Greg Fridman is also here. Tamara Raitt. So we have a whole bunch of people. Guy Chambers. Greg Bell, I think I already mentioned. So we'll get to a bunch of people. First, let me show you our poems that we did from the prompt. Once again, the prompt was to... hang on one second. Let me pull this up. Okay. So the prompt this week, as I mentioned, was right here. It was to write a poem about a parasite. Be as literal or as figurative as you wish. Now, usually I do a haiku at the end of every Poetry Spawn Live episode, and then I try to do the prompt poem too every week. So usually I have 2 poems I share. I'll try to keep doing that even though we're doing one show, especially because the haiku are really short, which is sort of the point. But for this week, since we didn't have much time, we had only 5 days, and it was a busy week for me, I combined both the haiku and the prompt poem into one poem. So I looked up for a science news story that was based on it was about a parasite, and actually there were a lot just in the last week. So I found about a dozen poems about parasites just published in scientific literature this week, and the most interesting one was this right here. This was Parasites as Fountains of Youth. Study finds infected ants live much longer. life expectancy of tapeworm-infected worker ants is significantly higher than that of their uninfected nestmates and resembles that of queen ants. So there's this little tiny species of acorn ant in Europe. The whole colony fits inside of an acorn, is where they usually live. There are about 100 of them that fit in there. They're only 2 millimeters in length. They're very, very tiny ants. And I don't think there are any pictures here in this article. But these ants become infected with a tapeworm. And the tapeworm lives in their blood, their little anti-insect blood. And they get about 70 tapeworms living in them. And rather than shorten their lifespan, these tapeworms make them live longer like a queen. And nobody really knows how to do it. It's this paper hypothesizes some possibilities. Could be that the tapeworms are releasing antioxidants that help the insect live longer, having less cellular decay. They think that maybe it's altering the ant's genes to express more queen ant genes, extending the life that way, because the queen ants live several years. The worker ants only live a few months usually. And so they sort of live like a queen if they're infected with this nasty parasite. And what the parasite does, very similar to that parasite that cats give to mice. What's that called? I can't remember. But very similar. It's because this tapeworm's breeding cycle includes being eaten by a woodpecker. So somehow the tapeworms get inside the ants, reproduce in there, and then make the ant get eaten by by a woodpecker, to repeat the whole cycle all over again. And it's just very, very strange and interesting. And so this was my haiku based on that. It's a series. It's a renge. And here we go. This is a renge. And so this is sort of supposed to be written in... A renge is a sort of American version of the renga, which is 6 haiku alternating between 2 poets usually. And so here I had in a conversation between the ant and the tapeworm, or one of the 70 tapeworms infecting it. The ant is the Temnothorax nylanderi, and the tapeworm is the Anomotania brevis. So this is a haiku conversation between the two in renge form. Harvest time. My sisters fill the cup of an acorn. A cup full of nesting dolls. Passing cloud, the woodpecker's shadow moving on. Even the dew is collecting dew, worker bee. The drone of the drones, always dying. A yellow leaf, softened by rainwater, fountain of youth. So that is by both my prompt poem and my haiku today. And Megan's prompt poem, we were both flummoxed by the short turnaround time. Megan had a short one, but it's a really good short one here. Double parasite. A tick attaches to the hiker's leg as he carves his name into the oldest tree. I'll read it again. Double parasite. A tick attaches to the hiker's leg as he carves his name into the oldest tree. Of course, we hike a lot, and we are very upset by the defacement of nature that you see all over the place. From graffiti on massive ancient pine trees covered in graffiti to they're bristlecone pines that are thousands of years old up in the mountains here, and people carve like a heart into them. It's so Megan was addressing that with this double parasite micro poem. Now let's go to the open lines and see what you have to share with us. We'll try to go in the order they were received, try to get to new people relatively soon. I should say if I call, I'm going to be calling you sort of from the future because there's a 30-second or so delay on the live stream. So be sure when I call to turn off your stream or at least mute it and only talk to me through the phone or Skype because otherwise it gets confusing. There's 2 voices at different times playing in your ear. It's just like calling into a radio show. So we'll start out with... Gordon Capola, who says he has a parasitical poem to share here. Let's call up Gordon. Hey, Gordon, how you doing?
I am great, Tim. How about yourself?
I'm doing excellent. It's fun. I like the combination, actually. I'm having a good time here. It's a good variety. So you have a prompt poem. What do you have to share with us?
Yeah, It'd been a couple of years since I'd written an acrostic poem, and it's such a fun, generative process. I thought I would try it for this one. So this is Acrostic of Love.
Interesting. Okay. And it's for the Parasite prom. No. Okay, let's hear it.
Practically everyone in the world aims to find love, but it's love that finds you, really. Love infiltrates, then takes full control, attaching itself between mind and genitalia, spinal column co-opted as propaganda channel. If you follow your heart, you'll be happy. The parasite I've got lies. Think of the sex. Everything dies that ever could have mattered.
Great last line there, Gordon. Thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure, Tim. Thanks.
Yep.
Have a good one.
Yep, you too. Bye. That was Acrostic Love from Gordon Coppola. Let's see. So we will also have, Kimberly McNeil is here too. I'm going to go first to Nivedita. We're trying to time it right because she's in the process of a busy day right now. So let's, I think this is a good time to hit up Nivi. She has two here. She has both the prompt and a post respond.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi, how you doing?
Hi, Tim. I'm doing great, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing very good. You're kind of quiet today. I don't know if you're far away from the mic.
Just 1 second.
Okay.
I'll just get the fan. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
So sorry about that. We're just shifting house and it's all, everything's like a bit all over the place right now. So
No problem. So you're moving to a different house?
just 5 floors up, the same condo we're staying at. I just moved a couple of floors up.
Gotcha. Well, I hope it goes well. I hate moving. There's nothing. I don't know. I mean, I guess being in
Trust
new
me,
places.
and at this time with the pandemic, it's worse. There's absolutely no help. So
Yeah. Well, good luck for all that you have to do today. You have two poems. Which one did you want to share first?
either one, both are ready for me. One is a prompt poem and one is a Poets Respond New Story poem. So whichever one you pull up, I'm ready to read that.
Okay,
first,
well, I've got
and do the next one later.
I've got the Common Human Parasites, a funny science lesson.
Okay, great. Common Human Parasites, a funny science lesson. 1. I'm a Bloody Mary kind of mosquito. No GNT or whiskey for me, not even a mojito. I do so love to take many tiny bites, despite being only a temporary parasite. But do remember, my lust for blood is second to none when all is said and done. Anopheles gambii is what I'm called, and tales of my many string operations will certainly leave you enthralled. 2. Roses are red and violets are blue, but I'm so in love with your head and your thick curly hair too. So I'll crawl in nice and slow, so soft and silent you won't even know, until I've made my home and bred some tiny pediculus humanus capitis, and then there's not much you can do except continue to feed us. Taenia solium's the name, and investigating your insides is my game. Unobtrusive as can be, I'll make my way in, and then unroll myself and start measuring you from deep within. My tape measure is never wrong, and I can gauge when your brain cells have last been at their active stage.
Oh wow! So I'm glad. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for you, but I'm glad that this episode is in the morning, so I don't have to lie in bed thinking about all these parasites.
I mean, being biologists, that's what we've grown up with. So I think, at least for you and me, at least, it's not that weird. I mean, it's what I've dealt with my whole life. So I'm like, oh yeah, there's a cadaver here. Yeah, give me my lunch. I'll just eat it. Here, you just wait here. So.
Yeah. Well, I just don't. I mean, the stuff crawling in my hair. I mean, at least I don't have.
That's just lice. I mean, that's just head lice.
Yeah.
Which is
Still.
common.
Do you want to do the other one too?
Yeah, sure. It's the sort of creepy crawlies that gets us. I think
It is. And so what was the other one? You had a poet respond too.
it's about a dolphin.
Mm-hmm.
If that helps, and basically an animatronic dolphin. Let's put it that way. So the makers behind Freeway and all the other movies, so they have this big animatronic dolphin that they're hoping to release in like amusement parks and things like that, so that real dolphins aren't sort of kept in captivity or something like that. So is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. So that's basically what I've tried to say here.
Okay, well, I tried to. Let's see. There was a big ad. Let me see if it's over quick. We could show the dolphin. We'll see. Okay, here it comes.
Mm-hmm.
We'll show the dolphin for everybody at home.
Oh, great.
So they're talking about created for animatronics for Flipper and Free Willy. Okay, let's get to the dolphin. Come on, people. That's not the dolphin, is it?
It is. It's
Oh my
extremely
God.
lifelike and exactly.
Wow. I cannot believe that's not a real dolphin. Oh, that is creepy. We're going to have zoos and stuff full of like fake animals, which I guess is great for animals. But
then again, that's exactly what I was going for with the poem. My last line is sort of like, it's good for the animals, but is it again a case of AI taking over? Because remember, my last week's poem was about a robot that cooked, so that's gone. And now this, so like basically, I don't think living beings of any species ever need to be alive if AI is going to be doing this to all of us. So let's just see what happens. I guess it's a wait and watch now.
yeah, well, for anybody who's just listening, you should go find this article because that dolphin looks like a real dolphin. Of course, dolphins are so smart. They're the worst animals to be in captivity. It's horrible that they are. So it's great that they're starting with a dolphin. But wow, I thought that was a real dolphin.
It's very freaky indeed.
It really, it's it's just strange. Yeah. Okay, let's hear the poem now.
Okay, great. Del the dolphin. The sun sinks and slips beneath the surface, and the silver moon starts to rise, painting the waves below and spotlighting the playful antics of the ocean's happiest critters. With smiles wide on their face, they leap and they dive and they prance, and waving their tail fins, dance to the melody of the ocean beat till the sun rises next morn. Now picture Del the animatronic dolphin, I mean, with a smile as real as your other friends at the sea. She swims and dances and prances just as well, and hugs and kisses even better. Could this signal a beautiful new beginning where animals are no longer held in captivity? Or could this signal a beautiful new beginning where AI has taken over our world?
Seriously, it could be an invasion of the body snatchers type. Like everyone's one by one replaced by a exact replica, and you wouldn't even know. Man, I just wrote a science fiction book in my head. Thanks for sharing.
Published. I'd happily buy a copy of that.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Nivi. Always a pleasure. Both these were really interesting. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Lovely talking to you.
Yeah,
Have a lovely day.
Yeah, and good luck with the new move. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, bye.
Bye.
So Nivi Karthik with two poems, Del the Dolphin and the other one about parasites. Let me read really quick. This is Carlton Johnson's poem. And it's a science-based news poem. Stone Age black bears. I'll put this on the screen too. Stone Age black bears didn't just defecate in the woods, is what this article says. Scientists have sequenced ancient DNA from soil for the first time, and the advance will transform what is known about everything from evolution to climate change. Oh, wow, that's interesting. And the findings have been described as the moon landings of genomics, because researchers will no longer have to rely on finding and testing fossils to determine genetic ancestry, links and discoveries. And it is thanks to Stone Age black bears who defecated in a remote cave in Mexico 16,000 years ago. Wow, that is a fascinating story. Interesting. DNA from the soil itself. Wow, and I guess anything the black bears ate? Wow. So let's see what Carlton Johnson wrote about that. This is In Caves 2. Oh, and here we go again. This is a reference to Poet Respond itself, a little self-referential poem here. Which one? This one. This is once again, this is Carlton Johnson. In Caves 2, I heard Richard Westheimer say the word shit during this morning's Poet Respond. It made me think shit gets my attention, especially when it is in all caps, shit, like the other baser words. Now, I read an article about long dead bears, 15,000 years. Now, a researcher, a scatologist, studied the Stone Age scat left by black bears, not bats in caves. And after all the jokes, rib pokes about bears taking a shit in the woods, it feels good to know that even 15,000 years ago, some bears bared all to poo, not in the woods, but in a cave, to leave some remains for future poo researchers to dig up the dirt on early bears. And that is Carlton Johnson in Caves 2. Thanks for sharing that, Carlton. Let's see. So let's go next to a first-time caller. Let's go to that 352 number and see who that was. Trying to find a new name. Hey, this is Tim from Rattle, and you are live on the air to share a poem. Who am I talking to?
This is Zachary Honeycutt. I submitted to the Poets Respond Challenge this past week.
Okay, great. Let me find that. And where are you calling from, first of all?
I'm calling from Gainesville, Florida.
Cool. And so what were you writing about? Let me find honey. How do you spell Honeycutt? Is it 2 T's at the end?
2 T's. Yeah, everyone gets it wrong. It's Huneycutt.
Okay, I got it right. Scott Honeycutt. Here we go. Oh wait, no. It's just did I get it wrong? Honey.
HU.
Oh, you.
HUN.
I did.
Yeah.
There's another honey. There's a Honeycutt that's spelled the other way too, but that's an artist.
Yeah. I mean,
So, a visual artist, I should say. Okay, Zachary Honeycutt, American Idol, 2001.
2021.
2021, I should say. Yeah. So what was this story you were writing about?
It was on MSNBC. It was just all about how Chase Beckham, won first place in American Idol, and I've been watching the show every year since Adam Lambert got second place years and years and years ago with my dad, and it just seemed like a really cool thing to write about. I really respect Chase Beckham just as a person and an artist. Mm-hmm. I thought that 23, his single, was an excellent song. I think he's a great songwriter, and I really liked his journey. I liked how inspiring it was. You know, he had that car crash, and he struggled with alcoholism, and he was able to turn his life around, and now he wins American Idol. So I just thought that it was meteoric, you know, how he rose to that position. And anyway, so I wrote a poem. I wrote a Spencerian sonnet that's all about his journey in the desert.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, the desert is the desert that I'm overlooking right now. He lives down in Apple Valley, really close, almost
exactly.
A local poem. Why don't you go ahead and read it?
Okay, thank you. The American Idol 2021. His voice sounds like the desert in my ears, like he saves sand at the back of his throat from the dry valley of his early years to take us to a place far and remote. The path he once wore is what he now wrote. The only water there are tears from his eyes, that he spared like the pain within each note, to tell us how he had to fall to arise. He woke upside down in a wreck that lies in the lowest valley of his disgust, and recalled his life flash before his eyes, the time spent on the highway in the dust. He scaled the valley, and now he's a light. Chase's story shines like a comet at night.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that. Really cool. It's always, I love a sonnet. Good to hear one. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yep, there was Zachary Honeycutt with the American Idol 2021. And I have another American Idol story. I'm one of the only people who can say that they broke an American Idol's nose. It is completely true. I was in a softball league with David. I can't remember his name. It was like 2008 or 7 maybe. One of those American Idol guys. He was like a redheadish guy. Kind of looked like the Chase guy. Played guitar. What was his name? David? I can't remember. He was playing third base though. And I hit a hard one hopper and hit him in the face and broke his nose. Blood everywhere. And it was not while they were filming American Idol though. So that is my brush with celebrity. Let's see. Let's go next to another second-time caller, but Tamara Raid.
Hello.
Hey, Tamara, let me pull you up so everybody can see you. 1 second.
Can you see me?
I can, yeah. I'm just trying to fix this. Oh, I hear myself in the background, so mute that. Okay, perfect. I think it's gone now. Okay, so we're good. Yeah, so where are you calling from? I can't remember.
I think you will hear by my accent. I come from France.
Ah, that's right. Okay.
But I'm currently in London.
Mm-hmm. And what were you writing about this week?
So I wrote about the cable car crash that took place in Italy, and that killed 14, 15 people, and mainly families with their kids. And so I heard the story of this young boy who is 5 years old and who survived thanks to the hug to his father. So I chose to write a poem about this hug, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this. A great poem. It was one of the ones that I was thinking about. A really good one. Let's hear it whenever you're ready. Have it up on screen now.
A poem that hugs you before you die. So how did this nursery rhyme go? Life is a funicular. His voice like two arms embracing your chest in a safe blanket with an undertone of angst. He says, look through the window, you see the landscape. People trying to get out, trying to escape. The shape of the mountain, immense, august, peaceful. So how did this nursery rhyme go? Life is a funicular. It is hanging by a thread. The others, they sing because they are happy to swing on a rope. Or the screams you hear, they are playing a game. And you could play too, my dear. Put your hand on my heart like a stethoscope. Count to 10, then count backwards. Tell me about how you want to become an engineer. Then close your eyes and everything around you will disappear.
Yeah, great startling ending there. Excellent poem. Thanks so much for that. And a tragic story. The footage out of there and the pictures and the idea of experiencing that, out of nowhere is just, puts things into perspective kind of too. So thanks for writing about it and sharing that poem.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Yep. Bye. Yeah, so that was a poem that hugs you before you die by Tamara Raitt. And before I forget, let me add the contact to the last caller, who was Zachary Honeycutt. Okay, so Zachary Honeycutt is in our phone book now. We'll know who it is next time. Let's call up next. Oops, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, let's call up Julian Matthews. Then we'll do Greg Bell. Hey, Julian, good to see you today.
Oh, hi.
So what do you have to share? I think you have a prompt poem for us, right?
Yeah, I think The Parasite.
Yeah, okay. Well, go ahead whenever you're ready. I'll put it up on the screen.
I figure that this might be uncomfortable for some people.
Okay.
Parasite. I'm a stray hair that grew white and curly and stuck out of your nose. Just so it made you itch. But when you try to scratch me, I disappear in the mirror, just out of reach of your tweezers, only to reappear when you are in close proximity with someone you need to impress. With every breath, I swung hither and thither, just under your right nostril. Or left, on reflection. You were never sure. My presence detected, the observer draws closer, notices, and backs away, repelled. It was like a strand of pubic hair gone rogue. You withdraw into the darkness, a ghost in your introverted shell, embarrassed even, supposedly tearful. I grow legs, 8 legs to be sure. I creep across your cheek into your ear. I'm a spider weaving invasive threads in the cavity of your eardrum. It bugs you. You reach out and stick your finger in, dig deep repeatedly, but you can never ever reach me. You are but a box of air holes for me to reside in. I grow more legs, throbbing thorax of moving parts. My antennae smell brain. I crawl deep into your cranium. The soft tissue of your neocortex is packed, tight, multi-layered. I find a nice warm groove to settle in and watch the sparse, agitated firing of neurons as you try to make sense of this new, prickly inhabitant. My legs turn into numerous slithering tentacles, grasping and feeding. You sneeze, you scratch both ears. Your head begins to throb. Sudden migraine sweeps you like a hurricane. Somewhere inside of your head, there is rumbling and lightning. Amid the spiking and clamor, my infiltrating appendages merge with your cortical interneuron. The storm passed. As quickly as it came, your headache disappeared. I'm inside you now. We are one. Eat me.
Oh man, another horror. We have like a horror poem, a horror movie poetry theme going on. That is another creepy one. Thanks so much for sharing that, Julian.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
That was Julian Matthews with Parasite, and of course you can find Julian at what was it? Julian's Poems. That's Julians Poems. I think on YouTube and Twitter, I believe. Oops. Okay, let's see. Next up, we are going to go. Who haven't we done yet? Oh yeah, we have still a bunch of people. Greg Bell, Greg Friedman. We'll do the two Gregs next. Then we got Guy Chambers. We got Kimberly McNeil. Patricia Rockwood, Spartacus, Don Krieger. So we have a lot of people. We'll try to get to I'll try to get to everybody. I'm really in no rush. It's Sunday morning. But let's do Greg Bell first. It's another Blood Moon poem. Well, Greg's not answering. Let's see. Okay, so we'll try to swing back to Greg. Make sure your ringer's on, Greg, or you got that popped up so you can see it. We'll try Greg Friedman instead. Hey, Greg. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. If you wanted to be on video, I don't see you, so if you could push the button
Let's
there.
see. How about that?
Here you come, I think. Yep, there you are. Ooh, nice internet connection. Let me shrink the screen size.
Okay.
Here we go. 1 second. Here you come. Okay, so what do you have to share with us today?
Dick Westheimer and I are long-distance pandemic friends, even though we come from the same part of the country. But I'm in Albuquerque right now, and I had written a poem about the same topic that Dick wrote, the very difficult situation there in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Was this A Child's World?
A Child's World,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have it here. Is there anything else you want to say about it before you launch in?
The news story was, of course, about Sheikh Jarrah, the neighborhood in Jerusalem, where that was at the center of some of the initial sparks to violence. But I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and so this is sort of my take on things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to hearing it. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
A Child's World. That day at checkpoint 300 from Bethlehem into Israel, I waited, American passport in hand. Ahead, an Arab boy with his family stared at the glass wall where the Israeli guard queried him, his 6-year-old face a mask. At 6, would I have wondered, what does she want? What does the other soldier want, his gun bigger than me? Will they hurt my mother and father? Can we just go back home? An Arab man behind me stepped forward to help, the standoff resolved in a rustle of documents. For me, shoes back on, retrieving my backpack from X-ray, my delay just a few minutes, no catastrophe, save to admit me to Al-Nakba, a people's catastrophe that clung to me like the dust on the Hebron road as I waited for the Arab bus home to the old city. 7 years later, I wonder, does he visit his grandmother that day in East Jerusalem? Does she still live in Sheikh Jarrah? Or have strangers eroded the stones of yet another family's legacy? Did a cousin's rash act trigger retaliation, a West Bank home in flames? Was he there today on the noble sanctuary with his father in the Al-Aqsa Mosque? Did he run blinded across its sacred stones? Or did he grow up to man the missiles in Gaza for Hamas? At other strangers in this cycle of anguish where mothers on both sides mourn. All this rises in smoke today over Lod, over Eliakim, over Tel Aviv, over Ashkelon, over Gaza City, over Jerusalem, over the Temple Mount, where I watch in memory from the church of Dominus Flevit and weep with the rabbi from Galilee.
Yeah, great ending. Great poem there. Thanks so much for sharing that.
You're most welcome, Tim. Thanks for you and all you do.
Yeah, my pleasure. It always is. Thanks. Hope you can join again soon.
I will. Thanks.
Yep, bye. That was A Child's World by Greg Friedman from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Let's see. Who do we have still? We have Kimberly McNeil, Guy Chambers, Spartacus. Let's do... Don Krieger. Yeah, Don Krieger hasn't been on in a while. Let me call up Don. I gotta stop doing that. Clearing my throat. Sorry, everybody. Okay, Don Krieger has this poem here. That Familiar Comfort. Let's call up Don. With a block print from Doug Smith. Let's see. Hey, Don, how you doing today?
I'm good. I just turned off the feed.
Perfect. Well, we got you loud and clear and looking good, sounding good. So what did you want to share with us today?
I think you have it. It's a poem called That Familiar Comfort.
I do. It's right here.
It's
what's
an occasional poem. It's the 100th anniversary of the events in the poem is Memorial Day tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. And there's this picture here, which I'll put on screen for everybody. Yeah. One second, though. Let's see. This view. Yeah, here we go. So what is this photograph?
That picture is the actually there's a label there at the bottom of it. It's a block print by Doug Smith. He's an artist who lives in Orange County, and that print was actually a gift. He gave it to me several years ago, and I've been staring at it for years and writing to it. I first wrote a haiku, which is, it's not really a haiku, but a very short poem. Bright night sky, great migration, streets on fire.
Yeah.
And then here's the poem. That familiar comfort. The river at Port Chicago was pink in the dawn glare. Strangely like that night, they fled for their lives. Biplane spotlit by burning buildings, kerosene bombs bursting on the roofs, clubs and rifles, white boys and their fathers, beasts hunting little Africa for black runners. Do you know this story? The Tulsa pogrom of 1921, 6,000 black people jailed, no whites, the Greenwood ghetto burned to the ground, no insurance ever paid, no crime ever charged, the dead uncounted. I never knew it till today. I bear that shame, small price for my privilege. From this day I forswear that familiar comfort, the cowardice of forgetting.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Don. A great poem and important topic, of course. We have that poem by Clemence Hurd, 99, in the summer issue of Rattle about the Tulsa race riots. People should be getting that soon. And then his whole book is about that, which is coming out from, I can't remember which press, but he'll be on the Rattlecast in the fall when it comes out. But yeah, such an important topic, and I didn't know about it either until maybe 5 years ago or something. It was one of those things that was just buried history, and important to be resurfacing it.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for airing it. That picture, actually, that's the cover for my book.
Oh, is it? Okay. What's your book?
And The book's right here. I think you can see it.
Yeah.
It's called Discovery. It came out last summer. And this poem was originally published in the Raw Art Review, which comes out of Baltimore. So a few years ago, not a lot. I mean, I haven't known about it for that long either.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good stuff. Thank you. Bye. The Down Krieger with the familiar comfort. Let's see. Next up, we will go to. Let's call up. Where was? Oh yeah, Kimberly McNeil. It's been on before, but not that frequently. So let's try make sure we get Kimberly in. Hey, Kimberly, how you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
You are live on the air. I think I hear myself in the background, so mute wherever you're listening to this, and then I'll pull you back in. Okay, I think that's off. I don't hear it anymore. Oh, no, I do.
Here we go.
Okay. Are you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you want to share?
I wanted to share voice memo number 186.
Okay, let me try to find a way. So I can't open Pages files. Trying to find, and I can't get to your All Poetry site either because it says can't be viewed by guests. So I have to register to log in. I think I can open a Pages file with do I have anything? No.
Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. Actually, would you mind? Let's see. Oh, maybe you sent it as a post too. You sent it as a Facebook post, and that works. Okay, so
yeah.
So that works. Voice memo number 186. So what was this about? Do you want to explain a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's a collection of thoughts that I put on my voice memo, which is a little application on iPhone where I carry mine. So when I have thoughts that I'd like to put in a poem, I won't forget them. And this poem is a metaphor for the loss of communication.
Well, let's hear it. I have it up for everybody. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
I'm afraid it's happening again. A mood bender, also known as psychotic depression. I know that because I keep thinking about it. Maybe that's why I don't think like other people. I don't talk like them. I don't really even understand them anymore. Their mouths move differently. It's like they all have something they have to tell me, breathlessly, urgently. The holy grail of happiness. A scroll of papyrus. The answer was not in the grail. It was not a scroll. It was the small central cardboard tube inside a roll of paper towels.
Oh, wow. That is a surprising turn at the end. What is this artwork that comes with a poem, too?
That's a composite image that I did, and I thought it it came out very strangely, but it seemed to fit to accompany
it definitely
my
did.
poem, because there's something kind of scary about it.
There is, yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. That was a very striking poem, especially with that turn at the end. It was good stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, that was Kimberly. Let's see. So, let's read the other poem too, by Carlton Johnson. He mentions he had another one, and we can do 2 poems. I guess there's a 2-poem limit on the new format because we want to be able to get both your poems in if you do 2. So this is another one by Carlton Johnson. This is the Parasite Prompt poem. And here it is. When I was young, you taught me about viruses and the brain of neurons and its convoluted lobes. I imagined going to bed, being scared, not of the little things under the bed or lurking in the closet, but questions that plagued me like a cancer. What happens when I go to sleep? Will I be transported to another world? Visit fantastical places only to be saddened by my awakening? Or will I be stalked by masked whispers, crying my name into the never silences? Now I fall asleep, meet my father, his large hands wrapped around a jar of formaldehyde containing blue sections of brain holed out by parasitic worms. I wish for my father's hands and good graces to patch up my holes of unknowing, of despair, so I might be more like him, strong and clear and sure, like the glass jar from Peru. Oh, very powerful image there. That dream, Carlton. Thanks so much for sharing that poem with us too. Good stuff. That was Carlton Johnson again with When I Was Young, You Taught Me. Let me see. So we still have Guy Chambers, Patricia Rockwood, and Spartacus. That'll probably be as much as we have time for. Let's call up Guy Chambers. Hey, Guy, how you doing today?
Oh, not too bad. How you doing?
I'm doing good. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I got this one poem, it's for, talk about parasites, but then I looked at a different angle. A joker came up.
Interesting.
Because I know years ago, I always hear the word, this guy's a joker or something like that, so it's kind of like a real parasite type of a person. So I call this joker here. I'm going to read it here.
Yeah, go ahead. Interesting.
Yeah. Another joker, dealt from the deck, shifty, snaky-eyed, connivery passion, enthroned with black magic, straddling the issues, honey tongue, stirs the embers between the lines, a flip of a card, twist of fortune, whitewash, double dealing, heroic Judas kiss.
Excellent. Very interesting take, Guy.
Yeah, I was just wondering, if anybody want to read more of my poetry, I got them on Facebook and Instagram. Mm-hmm. I'm under Guy Chambers author, and especially Instagram, you can show a lot of places that are being published and everything else. I know I got some more publications coming up, and that they'll be online there, and also I'm on YouTube under Guy Chambers author.
Very cool.
So if anybody wants to look up some of my poetry, it'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. That's Guy Chambers. That's Guy Chambers, Chambers.
Yep, that's
author.
it. Yep.
Find them at Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram and YouTube. I'm on Guy Chambers Poetry. It's more live, open mic things. I've got 18 on there. I'll be doing more coming out here and all too. So
very cool.
Okay then.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks
for sharing that, Guy. Yep.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, that was Guy Chambers with Joker. And let's see, Nate Jacob, is he here? He sent us a poem saying he'd be here. Let's see. We'll check on him. We might get Nate if he replies, if he's here. Guess we got Friedman. Okay, let's do Spartacus and Agnosterus.
Hiya.
Hey, Spartacus, how you doing today?
I'm really well, and you, Tim?
I'm great. Is this a better time for you in the morning than so late at night in the UK?
It is because it's afternoon now. It's almost 7 o'clock. Afternoon, evening.
Perfect. Yeah. So what did you want to share with us today?
I've got a funny poem which I sent also to Poets Respond,
Mhm.
and it's about the red hunted tamarins, which they change their accent when they enter a shared territory with another species of tamarins.
Interesting. So this is
And
instruction. Is it instructions to seafarers?
yes,
Okay.
and the title is so odd because I try to combine it with the Arctic Golurus, which landed on Wales sea coast and was resting on some rocks there.
Interesting. Well, go ahead whenever you're ready. I have it here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Instructions to seafarers. Skills required: jumping, running, ability to change your accent, damnation of memory, intention to tell lies in a creative way that doesn't interfere with politics. Gameplay. Blind Man's Buff is played in spacious Amazonian rainforests if the players are able to spot any trees that have not been cut down. The players attempt to speak to other players without being able to see them. Rules. 1. When entering shared territories, stop swearing and avoid battles. If you meet red-handed tamarins, the code word is potato. However, if you meet pied tamarins, ask for a potato. If you have any mating propositions, be quick. If you meet any tigers, it's not a good idea to play the game of the strongest personality. If you meet any hunters, you are allowed to change game and play hide and seek. If you meet an Arctic walrus resting on Amazonian trees, it's time to stop playing and start thinking about climate crisis. In real world, the only acceptable rule in games is to break all the rules.
That was great. I had to hold in my chuckles there. Thanks so much for sharing that. A funny poem, Spartacus.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was Spartacus and Agnosterus with instructions to seafarers. And a couple of those lines are really good in the rules. Thanks, Spartacus. Let's see. Oh, stop doing that. Okay. I think we... Patricia Rockwood. Call up Patricia. Oh, we have a poem by Mickey Vico, too. Some short haiku. Hey, Patricia, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm good, Tim. Hi.
Yeah, let me get your poem up. It's Friends.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to say about it?
Well, it's a Poets Respond poem, and it's about a story that I saw in the New York Times about how English language programs were looking for a way to teach American idioms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, the hardest thing to learn in a language is the idioms. And so the way that they did it was by playing old episodes of Friends. And so that's what my poem is about.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready. I'll put it up.
Okay. It's reported that English language teachers, searching for those perfect language features, found a hit TV show with the best American idiom-speaking cast. It seems then, to achieve their ends, friends gotta let friends watch Friends.
Great last line. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Patricia.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
That was Patricia Rockwood with Friends, and you can find her at patriciarockwood.com, just like it sounds. Okay, I think that might be it. So let me make sure we didn't miss anybody. Oh, yeah, we have Vicky Miko. Sorry, I forgot about... I'm not sure if Vicky's here, but she did send this short poem, this Memorial Day haiku, which will be published in Tesoro Duro, July-August issue 2021. Let's see. She also says, hi, Tim and Megan. My husband was a Vietnam veteran. He didn't talk much about the war. He died in a car crash in 1990. These are the first poems I've written about him. I'm very happy they're going to be published. And here they are. This is Memorial Day Haiku 2021. And screen view here. I'll just read them for Vicky. A sniper adjusts his gun scope. A baby's cry. A sniper adjusts his gun scope. A baby's cry. Moment of silence. The stinging rain drips off the soldier's visor. Moment of silence. The stinging rain drips off the soldier's visor. His fatigue shirt hanging from the doorframe, lengthening shadows. His fatigue shirt hanging from the doorframe, lengthening shadows. Wrapped inside a box, his dog tags. Wrapped inside a box, his dog tags. And that was Vicky Miko with 4 haiku. Just wonderful, wonderful haiku, Vicky. Thanks so much for sharing those with us today. A perfect way to end the show the day before Memorial Day. And I think we got to every except for Nate, who, let's see. I think I will also read Nate's poem here, because he didn't reply. Nate Jacob, he did not reply to here, but he did send this. He wrote a Parasite poem and sent it in. So let's share Nate's poem too. Nate Jacob. This is, fix this up a little bit. This is a Parasite Love Song by Nate Jacob, the prompt poem that he wrote. Parasite Love Song. 2 fellow parasitologists fall in love. He wanted nothing to do with her, finding her features all too cat-like and her behavior to be of a lower order entirely. She found him charmingly repellent, as if she were drawn to the worst of him, while barely reasoning herself away in fear. The undetected parasites in each of them had recently found their respective hosts to be suddenly inhospitable environments. And proximity being at a premium these days, the worms decided an urgent host swap was best, his parasite moving into her and vice versa. The 2 wormy cupids took matters into hand, dispensing flirty arrows knocked from within, easily rendering each host a lovelorn mess. And messes being what they are these days, the parasites made quick work of the move, passing like 2 ships in the night. Excellent. Parasite Love Song by Nate Jacob. Thanks for sharing that, Nate. And I think that is going to be a wrap for the show. This is Rattlecast number 95. So glad everybody could join us. Great poems on the open lines. I think the new format works really well. So we will be shrinking the show from 2.5 hours down to 2 for the iTunes podcast, just to make the most of sound quality and things like that. And, make the listening experience the center of the audio-only version a little bit more. So look forward to that. It'll be up online on your iTunes, or not iTunes, but anywhere that you get your podcasts later today. Before we go, let me just put this up on screen. Next week's guest, once again, is going to be Melissa Balmain. Her newest book is Walking. I'll stand up for a second. Let me find this. Can see how squeaky my chair is. This is the other one, really interesting too, that Melissa had. I'll put this up here. This is her other book, The Witch Demands of Attraction, Fairy Tale Reboots for Adults. And so there's this, really looking forward to this too, and the idea of what she was doing here. Pinocchio Runs for Office is one of the poems. And so we'll be talking about these poems too. This is out from Humorous Books. And then she also has, as I mentioned, Walking In on People, a book of poems from Able Muse Press. And that is Melissa Balmain is going to be the guest. And before I forget, the prompt for this week coming up will be right here. Oops. Write a poem in which an inanimate object or concept is personified. See Mirror by Sylvia Plath for a great example of a poem that makes excellent use of personification. So write a poem in which an inanimate object or concept is personified. That is your prompt for this week. We'll see what you come up with over the next course of the week, and looking forward to those on the open lines at the end of next week's Rattlecast. And once again, next week's Rattlecast is number 96, featuring Melissa Balmain. Sunday, June 6th, we're going to do it at the new regular time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll do a half an hour of Poets Respond Live, maybe take one or two callers, and then we'll talk to Melissa for an hour. Then we'll have open lines for anything you would like to share. And that is Rattlecast number 96, Sunday, June 6th. Looking forward to you. Have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.